HartsvilleWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, August the 4th. We are now into the month of August, and we expected an uptick in tropical activity across the Atlantic Basin, and indeed, we have an uptick in that tropical activity. Not surprisingly, this is the time of the year where things normally ramp up. In fact, I think the average first hurricane is right around August 11th or so, so we're kind of on schedule for that. We're not past that point. We have had a below normal season so far with 4 relatively weak and short-lived named tropical storms. We have the 4th right now. Dexter has been named, and we'll take a look at that in a moment here. It's pretty harmless, moving away from the U.S. mainland out into the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean. This is the accumulated cyclone energy, the latest updated numbers here. Again, well below normal so far this year, but again, activity is really starting to look like it'll build up here over the next few weeks. 1.8 is the current ACE number here, the accumulated cyclone energy, which takes into consideration the longevity of a storm as well as its magnitude. We're supposed to be right around 10.8. That can change quickly, though, and certainly there are a few players on the field right now, and I think the next few weeks will definitely be pretty active in the Atlantic Basin. The Pacific Ocean right here split into 2, the Northeast Pacific, Northwest Pacific, both of those areas below normal as well, but some activity out there. Very quiet, in fact, totally quiet in the Indian Ocean so far this season, and that all produces below normal conditions, about 50% of where we should be right now across the northern hemisphere. Now, normally the Pacific Ocean season gets kind of underway, kicking into gear before the Atlantic Basin. So this is a little bit later in the season, you might think of, relative to normal in the Pacific Ocean for it to be this far below normal. But again, still time for all of this to change dramatically, and we'll have quite an uptick, I think, in the ACE here during the month of August in the Atlantic Basin. Well, one reason I do believe we'll have quite an important uptick in the ACE across the Atlantic Basin during August is what we looked at here, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. This kind of tracks a tropical disturbance across the global tropics, and it is going to move into a much more favorable position here over the next few weeks for upward motion to intensify in the Atlantic Basin, and that includes the Gulf, the Caribbean Sea, the southwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean. This is the MJO as we push through the middle of the month of August. And remember, on this kind of a plot, the MJO pushes in a counterclockwise direction, and these numbers here represent different phases, and we have 8 different phases that represent different locations around the world. By the way, those locations are shown here: Western Pacific, then the Western Hemisphere in Africa. Here, if the MJO is in these phases here, it's kind of over the Indian Ocean. Now, you notice here the MJO is moving right through these phases here over the next few weeks. This takes it out through phase 1 and then into phase 2. And these couple of phases right here, phase 1 and 2, and even into 3, generally pretty active for the Atlantic Basin. In other words, that tropical system, the tropical disturbance that propagates on a regular basis throughout the equatorial region of the globe, moves into a position during the next few weeks where it should intensify upward motion in the Atlantic Basin. So again, with this kind of a trajectory here for the MJO, expect an uptick in tropical activity. We're already starting to see that right now. Now, it's not the only factor here. We can always get dry air masses from the Sahara Desert region of Africa that move westward right into the heart of the breeding grounds region of the Atlantic Basin. That could prevent any kind of development. That's another factor we'll take a look at here, but the MJO certainly looks much more favorable over the next few weeks. Well, here's where we stand right now. According to NOAA's National Hurricane Center, we have a new tropical storm. It's Dexter, and again, it's relatively harmless for all of us here in the U.S. East Coast area because it's moving in this fashion out into the open waters of the Atlantic. Probably will not reach hurricane status. I think right now the maximum sustained winds about 45 miles per hour, so it would have to strengthen quite a bit to reach hurricane status, and it's soon to be headed into the cooler waters of the middle and northern Atlantic here. Another area of interest here, we'll have to just monitor this off the southeast U.S. coastline, could evolve into a tropical system, and we have a wave that has come off now the west coast of Africa. That looks pretty promising. It's moving over warm waters of the tropical Atlantic, and again, it will be moving in this fashion here at the time that MJO, that tropical disturbance across the equatorial region of the globe, moves into a more favorable position for upward motion. And whenever you have upward motion over the Atlantic Basin this time of the year with those very warm waters, you increase the chance of tropical storm development, you increase the chance for tropical storm intensification. So this is certainly of interest right here. So here we are now into August, and we have 3 systems on the playing field right now. And again, I think the next few weeks will be active indeed. Well, I'd like to loop through some forecast maps here using last night's 0Z run of the European model. Just a couple of parameters to look at here. I always kind of focus in on the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern this time of the year. Whenever there's ridging, strong high pressure ridging that builds into the northeast U.S. or the southeastern part of Canada, tends to be correlated with more tropical activity down across the southwestern Atlantic Ocean. It kind of opens the door for tropical systems to undercut the ridge and move from east to west towards the southeast U.S., towards the Gulf, or towards the Caribbean Sea. So this is an area right here shown in orange that represents higher heights than normal at the 500 millibar level. Now I'm going to just crank this on so it slowly loops through the next several days, and keep focus again on this particular area over the southeastern part of Canada. And here we go, and notice that we'll have building ridging into the southeastern part of Canada. This is now the middle of this week, a very strong ridge over Hudson Bay by the middle of the week, and that's not the only one. We'll go a little farther in time. Now we're out to the end of this week here, and we have yet another kind of high pressure ridging building into the southeastern part of Canada. And here we go. That's a week from right now. And then we have kind of a temporary break in that pattern with a trough moving into this part of Canada here. But that quickly followed by the middle or latter part of next week of yet another high pressure ridge over the eastern part of Canada. So again, that tells me we do have possibilities of tropical systems kind of undercutting that ridge and potentially impacting the southeast U.S. coastline or the Gulf or the Caribbean Sea here. So a pretty favorable pattern in terms of 500 millibars going forward. And this, again, is right around the middle part of August. Now, keeping in mind that this coincides with that more favorable pattern of the MJO, which will produce some upward motion in the Atlantic Basin. Now we'll wrap up with the surface forecast maps, again using the 0Z run of the European model. Right here, this is the tropical storm Dexter, again with 45 mile per hour sustained winds. We'll just push forward here. Really nothing showing up of any real significance. Dexter moves to the east-northeast over the next few days, harmlessly out into the open waters of the Atlantic Ocean. And a couple of low-pressure systems we'll see moving towards the southeast U.S. coastline. We'll have to just monitor those here. But again, nothing that really can be pinpointed at right now for significance. But the pattern is what we're focused in on here this morning. The pattern is favorable, so things could change in terms of these surface forecast maps. So let's begin the loop here. And Dexter moves off right here to the east-northeast, and then we have that high-pressure ridging at the surface as well over the southeastern part of Canada. Now we'll see here. Here's low pressure right here off the southeast U.S. coastline. That could become a named tropical storm. We'll have to monitor that over the next few days, potentially impacting the southeast U.S. This now takes us out to a week from right now, next Monday, And again, still nothing of high significance here over the western Atlantic Ocean on this European model run, but it's something that the overall pattern is quite favorable. So we'll have to certainly monitor this area going into the middle of August. Again, this takes us out right there into the middle of August. So maybe that Dexter is the first system here that moves east-northeast, and there may be a second system later this week or this weekend that could become a named tropical storm right around this area here. So again, the overall pattern is certainly becoming more favorable for activity, and I do believe we'll have quite a bit of activity here over the next 3 or 4 weeks or so in the Atlantic Basin. That's it for now for ArcFieldWeather.com. This has been meteorologist Paul Dorian.